2 weeks ago, I bought my parents a $425,000 seaside house for their 50th anniversary. When I arrived, my mother was crying, my father trembling, and my sister's husband was shouting, "This is my house. Get out." The cake I brought slid from my hand and hit the floor. My sister laughed until she saw me standing in the doorway. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. What they didn't know was, I grew up in a house that shook when trucks passed by. The wallpaper peeled near the heater, and every sound carried arguments. Apologies. Silence. My mom used to whisper bills to herself like prayers. Water, power, rent. My dad, Walter, came home smelling of engine oil and rain. He'd wash his hands for a long time before dinner, like he could scrub the day off. I was 10 when I learned what panic sounded like. Mom stood by the kitchen window, holding an envelope from the landlord. She pressed it flat like she could iron away the numbers. "We're short again," she said, voice cracking. Dad looked at me, then at the ceiling, like the answer might be hiding up there. I said the only thing I knew how to say. "It'll be fine, Mom." It wasn't. But that line became my job description. I was the fixer before I knew what fixing meant. Brooke was different. 2 years younger, softer, prettier. When she cried, people rushed in. When I cried, they told me to be strong. I learned early that being dependable was the fastest way to disappear. At dinner, Dad would ask how school was. Before I could answer, Brooke would sigh, "I hate math," and he'd spend the next 10 minutes helping her. I didn't mind, at least I told myself I didn't. There was one Christmas when everything cracked a little. I had spent weeks mowing lawns and saving to buy Dad a new socket wrench set, the cheap kind, but still better than the rusty one he used. Brooke gave him a drawing she'd done in art class. It was crooked and sweet. Dad lifted it up, smiled like it was the Mona Lisa. My gift stayed wrapped on the floor until Mom noticed and handed it to him. He said thanks without looking up. I swallowed it. But it carved deeper than I thought. By high school, I'd turned usefulness into oxygen. I worked part-time at the grocery store, bought my own shoes, and paid half the electric bill when Dad's overtime dried up. Mom said, "You're a good son." Brooke said, "You're obsessed." Maybe both were true. When college came, I left for Boston with 2 suitcases and a scholarship that barely covered books. The night before I left, Dad shook my hand instead of hugging me. Mom cried. Brooke rolled her eyes, and I promised to send money when I could. I didn't know it then, but every dollar I sent home would turn into a rope around my own neck. During med school, I got texts like, "Brooke's behind on rent again," or "Kyle's looking for investors." I didn't even know who Kyle was yet. I'd Venmo small amounts, $200, $400, telling myself it was temporary. But temporary became tradition. Years later, Brooke dropped out of art school, said she wanted to find herself. She found Kyle instead. He was the kind of guy who sold big dreams in small bars. Slick hair, loud laugh, no plan. My parents adored him because he was charming. I saw a fuse ready to blow. They got married fast. At the wedding, Brooke asked if I could help them get started. I paid the deposit for their first apartment. I didn't go inside. Kyle didn't invite me. That should have been a clue. A month later, Mom called. "They're behind on utilities," she said softly, like the words were ashamed to leave her mouth. I covered it. Then another bill. Then braces for Mia, their daughter. Then a used minivan. Then rent after an eviction. My Venmo notes turned into diary entries. Brooke's school trip for Mia. Kyle job interview suit. Just this once again. Every transfer made me feel in control, like I could keep the family from falling apart if I just worked harder. But control is a lie dressed as comfort. I didn't know it yet, but my generosity was raising its own monster. By the time I finished residency, my whole life fit inside a hospital locker and a spreadsheet. I worked 90-hour weeks, lived on black coffee and adrenaline, and sent home half of every paycheck. When people at the hospital asked why I never took vacations, I said, "I'm saving." What I didn't say was saving who. Brooke called it family teamwork. Every time she texted me, it started with, "I hate to ask," and ended with, "You're the only one who understands." She was right. I understood too well. Our parents still called her our little free spirit, as if debt and denial were personality traits. Mom packed groceries into Brooke's trunk and called it cleaning out the pantry. Dad let Kyle borrow tools that never came back. I bought silence. They bought peace. One Thanksgiving, I drove home after a 40-hour shift. The table was crowded with people I didn't recognize: Kyle's cousins, their loud kids. I set down a bottle of wine. Brooke stood up and announced, "Ethan's the reason we're all here." Everyone clapped. I smiled, confused, until she explained that I'd covered the deposit on their new house. I hadn't. She'd used my name on the lease. When I confronted her later, she laughed. "Relax, big brother. You can afford it." That night, I sat in my car outside their house, watching the porch light flicker. I could hear them arguing inside. Brooke shouting, Kyle slamming a door. I should have walked away then. Instead, I told myself they'd grow out of it. They didn't. The first time Kyle asked me directly for money, he called it an investment opportunity. His startup would make smart beach rentals. The irony didn't hit me until much later. I said no. He smiled like I'd just challenged him to a game. "You'll change your mind," he said. He wasn't wrong. A week later, Brooke sent a photo of Mia's broken front tooth playground accident. No insurance. I wired the money. Again, I learned to compartmentalize, to scrub in, cut open a skull, and not think about my family unraveling 3 states away. I told myself I was doing good in both worlds, saving lives in one, saving family in another. I didn't notice how blurred the edges had become until the night Dad called me from the garage. His voice trembled. "Kyle's using my tools again. Says he's fixing the roof, but he's been drinking." He paused. "I don't want to start a fight." That was Dad, a man who'd rather lose his tools than raise his voice. I booked a weekend off, drove home, replaced the broken shingles myself, and found Kyle asleep in a lawn chair, beer can balanced on his stomach. Brooke came out, sunglasses on though it was cloudy, and said, "You didn't have to do that." "I know," I said, "but someone had to." The next year blurred. Brooke's texts kept coming, my savings kept shrinking. When I finally crossed the 6-figure mark in my account, I didn't feel rich. I felt cornered. I realized that every dollar I sent her didn't fix anything. It just fed the belief that she could always count on me to clean up her mess. So, when I found the little blue house by the bay, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just a gift. It was a declaration. The white deck, the humming windows, the 2 palm trees I wanted my parents to breathe without asking permission. I closed it in their names, set up a trust so it could never be taken from them, prepaid the taxes 20 years ahead. I stocked the fridge, left a note in the silverware drawer that said, "For mornings that smell like coffee and ocean air." I didn't tell Brooke, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted one thing in this family untouched by guilt. When Mom cried seeing the view, when Dad ran his hand along the banister like he was playing a familiar song, I thought maybe I'd finally fix something that would stay fixed. I didn't know that photo. Dad posted a sunset captioned, "View from our porch," would be the spark that burned the illusion down. I didn't know Brooke was already scrolling, already plotting, already packing her bags. The photo went up on a Thursday night. My father wasn't a social media guy, but he'd found the share button like it was destiny. View from our porch. The picture showed the water turned gold, my mother's coffee cup in the corner, and a sliver of the white deck rail. Within an hour, Brooke commented, "Whose porch?" By Friday morning, she texted Mom, "Are you at the beach?" Mom replied, "Just visiting a friend." A lie so fragile it cracked. Under the next question, "What friend?" That weekend, I was finishing a 16-hour surgery when my phone buzzed nonstop. Group messages, missed calls, pictures of a car in the driveway that wasn't my parents'. Brooke had tracked the house down reverse image. Location tags. Pure obsession. When I called Mom, she sounded out of breath. "They just wanted to see it," she said. "Then they stayed. Just for the weekend." "It's not a rental," I said. "I know. We'll talk when you come down." I drove to Cape Ann the next morning. The road was empty. The ocean flashing between trees like a secret, trying to breathe. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt. I turned the corner, saw the SUV parked crooked across the driveway, and knew. The screen door banged in the wind. Inside, boxes were stacked like an invasion. Plastic bins, toys, a half-deflated flamingo float. Mom stood by the sink, gripping a dish towel. Her eyes were red. Dad sat in a chair, hands trembling on his knees. From the living room, cartoon voices screamed over a commercial. Then Chase appeared, barefoot, beer in hand. "Hey, Doc," he said, grinning like we were friends. You made it. I didn't answer. He waved his bottle toward my father. We're just getting settled. Prime location, huh? Mom whispered, Chase, please. He cut her off. Relax, Mom. We're family. I turned to Brooke. She was on the couch, scrolling her phone, hair perfect, sunglasses perched like armor. Don't be dramatic, she said. We're helping them manage the place. Manage? She lifted her phone and flashed the screen. A brand new Airbnb listing my parents' house, under the name Brooke and Chase's Seaside getaway. My stomach went cold. You did not. Chase shrugged. You gifted it to them, right? So technically, it's family property. We're maximizing its potential. 5. Dad stood, face pale. No one agreed to that. Chase pointed at him, the same hand that held the beer. You're old, Walter. Stairs are dangerous. We're doing you a favor. Something in me flicked off. The noise, the clutter, the arrogance, all of it went distant. I picked up the cake box I'd brought, the lid digging into my palm, and set it on the counter. Get everyone in the living room, I said quietly. They laughed. I didn't. Within minutes, the air thickened. The cartoons were muted. The kids sat awkwardly on the rug, watching the adults. Mom's lips moved in silent prayers. Dad's hands clenched. Brooke rolled her eyes. Chase leaned back, smug. You're making this a big deal for nothing. You listed a house you don't own, I said. Ownership's just paperwork, he replied. Family's what matters. Then let's talk family. I opened my bag and laid out the first document, the property deed, in my parents' names. Then the trust, naming me as trustee. Then a printed screenshot of their listing. Then the HOA clause. No short-term rentals allowed. The color drained from Brooke's face, but she recovered fast. You can't be serious. We were just excited for them. Chase smirked. You think a few papers scare me? He didn't see the locksmith's van parked 2 houses down. I glanced at my phone. They will. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? You'll find out in about 10 minutes. The silence that followed felt surgical, precise, sterile, and irreversible. The seconds stretched like surgical stitches. Chase glanced toward the window, spotted the locksmith van, and scoffed. You called backup? What are you gonna do? Change the locks on your own family? Yes, I said. Exactly that. Mom flinched at my tone steady, not loud, but final. Brooke shot up from the couch, her smile cracking. Ethan, stop being so dramatic. You're embarrassing everyone. I turned to her. You embarrassed yourself the moment you stole what wasn't yours. Chase laughed. That low, mocking sound that always made my skin crawl. You think this makes you a hero? You're just a control freak with a god complex. What's next? Kick your parents out too? My father's jaw tightened. Enough, he said softly, but the word evaporated. Chase took a step forward, towering over him. You should thank me, old man. I'm keeping you safe from stairs, from bills, from dignity. I cut in. The room went still. Even the kids froze. Chase turned on me. Beerkin shaking. You don't get to talk to me like that. I walked to the coffee table and laid down the printed group chat. Brooke thought she'd deleted the one she'd sent to her friends. He always caves if Mom cries. We'll get the house one way or another. Her face drained of color. Where did you get that? Dad forwarded it. I said. Apparently, guilt has better Wi-Fi than conscience. Brooke's lips trembled. We just wanted to help. You wanted control, I said. Same as always. Mom whispered, please, both of you. But it was too late. The front door creaked open, and Victor Hayes stepped in, toolbox in hand. His presence changed the air. He was tall, silver-haired, steady. My father looked up, eyes widening with recognition. Victor, he said, voice breaking. You built our first apartment. Victor smiled softly. Still remember how to fix a deadbolt. Walter. Chase's bravado faltered. You can't just barge in here. I didn't, Victor said calmly. He called me. He nodded at me. Brooke turned desperate. Ethan, please. Don't do this. The kids, they'll be fine, I said. They don't need to grow up thinking theft is family tradition. Chase slammed his beer down, foam spraying the floor. You think you're better than us? You think because you've got some fancy degree. I looked at him, unblinking. No, I just know what's mine and what's not. He smirked. Yeah? Try to stop me. Victor met my eyes, subtle. I gave a nod. He stepped out to start changing the locks. The click of his tools echoed like a countdown. Brooke moved toward Mom, her voice syrupy and trembling. Mom, he's cruel. He's tearing us apart. You always said family first. Mom hesitated. Her fingers twisted the dish towel she'd been holding since I arrived. I saw the war behind her eyes, the mother who wanted peace, and the woman finally tired of bleeding for it. Then she said it. Quiet, steady. Enough, Brooke. The sentence hung in the air like thunder. Brooke's mouth fell open. She blinked once, twice, like the world had tilted. Dad stood, slowly. Son, he said, looking at me. Do what you have to. I nodded. Chase barked a bitter laugh. You people are insane. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but we'll regret nothing together. Victor returned, wiping his hands. All done. Brooke whispered, you can't just lock us out. I opened my laptop on the counter, pulled up 3 drafted emails, one to the HOA board, one to the county recorder, one to the Airbnb trust and safety team. I hit send. I already did. The whoosh of those emails leaving was the cleanest sound I'd ever heard. Outside, Chase's voice broke into the night, anger, panic, then silence. The SUV doors slammed. Tires spun gravel. Mom sank into a chair, crying softly. Dad rested a hand on her shoulder. I poured water into the kettle, my hand steady for the first time in years. I didn't want it to come to this, Mom said between breaths. I know, I said, but sometimes peace needs new locks. She let out a weak laugh that turned into a sob. Dad looked out the window toward the ocean, his reflection trembling in the glass. From the deck, the waves crashed once, like applause. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, like the house itself had exhaled. What I didn't know then was that the real storm hadn't even started. The next morning, the house smelled like salt and burnt coffee. For the first time, the silence wasn't fragile, it was earned. Mom was sitting by the window with her mug, Dad reading the paper, pretending his hands didn't shake. I thought maybe it was over. Then the SUV came back. Gravel crunched outside. Voices rose. I stepped onto the porch just as Chase slammed his door, Brooke following. Her face streaked from crying or pretending to. Victor's van was gone. The locks gleamed new in the sunlight. You think you can just erase us? Chase shouted. You don't own family. I own this trust, I said, and this property. You're trespassing. He laughed, wild and high. You think a few signatures can stop me? He grabbed the handle and yanked. The door didn't budge. He hit it again. The keypad flashed red. Stop, Mom cried from behind me. Brooke reached out, trembling. Ethan, please. The kids are in the car. They're scared. Just talk to us. Talking is what got us here, I said. I've been talking for 10 years. You just don't listen. Dad moved beside me, voice steady. You need to leave, Chase. Chase sneered. Or what? You gonna call the cops on your own daughter's family? If I have to, Dad said quietly. That stopped him. Just for a second. Brooke's eyes filled again. We didn't mean to steal anything. We just thought if the house was family, it should belong to all of us. It does, I said. To Mom and Dad. It's theirs until the day they die. After that, it stays in the trust for charity. And not of the court. He was. Her mouth fell open. Charity? Not even. No, I said. Not even you. Chase's face twisted. He took a step closer. You're not doing this, man. You don't get to decide how this ends. I stared at him, calm. I already did. He lunged not far, just enough for the motion sensor camera above the door to blink blue. He froze when he heard the chime. What's that? Smart lock, I said. Records everything. Brooke turned pale. You wouldn't. I already did, I repeated. The air was knife sharp. Behind me, Mom whispered. Please, let's end this. Dad put a hand on my shoulder. Son. I nodded. We're ending it. I opened the door just enough to slide out onto the porch, standing between them and the entrance. The wind carried salt and the distant call of gulls. You have 10 minutes to leave, I said. After that, I call HOA enforcement and the police. They already have the emails, the footage, and the listing. You're done. Chase's jaw worked like he wanted to say something brave, but the words wouldn't form. Brooke pulled on his arm. Let's go. He shook her off, muttering curses. This isn't over. It is. I said, "You just don't know it yet." He spat on the driveway, climbed into the SUV, and peeled out so hard gravel hit my legs. Brooke lingered a moment longer. Her voice broke. "You'll regret this when they're gone, Ethan." I looked back at my parents in the doorway, my father's steady frame, my mother's shaking shoulders. "They're not gone," I said. "They're finally home." She turned, climbed into the car without another word. When the engine faded down the hill, I went back inside. The kettle whistled. Mom's hand found mine. "I never wanted you two to fight," she whispered. "I didn't fight," I said. "I drew a line." Dad looked at the door. "That's the first time that thing's been closed right." Outside, the sun hit the windows, and they sang in the wind. I exhaled slowly, feeling the last of the tension drain. But somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't peace yet, just the quiet before the next noise. For a few days, everything felt suspended, like the tide had gone out but hadn't decided whether to return. Mom started baking again. Dad fixed the loose step on the deck. At night, the house glowed warm and safe the way I'd imagined it would. Then the messages started. Brooke's posts popped up on Instagram. Blank backgrounds. White text. "When money turns people cruel." Then a photo of my car in the driveway. "Some people think they can buy love." I didn't respond. I'd learned that feeding chaos only makes it louder. A week later, the HOA forwarded a complaint. Someone had tried to relist the property under a different name, different email, same photos, same stolen description. I forwarded the deed in trust to the platform's safety department. The listing vanished within an hour. The account was banned. Chase sent me a text. "Cease and desist, Dr. Boy." Another from an unknown number. "We'll see who really owns the family now." I didn't answer either. I wasn't in the business of arguing with ghosts. Instead, I focused on the house, the humming windows, the smell of lemon soap, the way my parents' laughter filled the hall. Every sound felt like proof that I'd done the right thing. But peace has its own kind of echo. Late one night, I got a notification from the porch camera. A figure lingered by the gate, hood up, face hidden, testing the latch. The video caught only a sliver of movement before the system chimed. Lock engaged. The next morning, I printed the still image and placed it in the folder labeled Boring Armor. Another layer of protection. Another quiet line drawn. People think revenge is about rage. They're wrong. Revenge is clarity. It's the calm after you finally stop explaining yourself. And I wasn't finished being clear. If you've ever been the one who held everything together until it broke in your hands, this story is for you. I used to think love meant fixing people, paying their debts, making peace at my own expense. It doesn't. Love is a door that locks when it needs to. Love is silence that finally feels safe. My name is Ethan Miller, and I stopped being the family bank the day I chose peace over guilt. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over. Another storm's already forming on the horizon.